It's that time again. Free Thought Hour begins now. And it's welcome to my co-host from South Africa, back in her normal part of South Africa, I think. Tercia, how the devil are you?
I'm good. I'm in South Africa and from South Africa and in my hometown of Worcester, where I belong in wine country. So Sarah, with whom we had our guest, with whom we had a brief hello before we came on live, said that she's drinking tea, she's having tea tonight in honor of the UK. So I'll just say that of tea and coffee, I prefer wine.
Well, so do I really, yes.
So let's hear what does Sarah think about wine?
Yes, Sarah.
Wine is divine.
Yes. Wine is divine indeed. So, Sarah, welcome. How the devil are you?
I'm having a good day. Yeah.
Good,
Very
good.
day.
Excellent. Well, the reason that we know each other, Sarah and I, is because we were both contributors to a radio show, the Knoxville Digital Radio Free Thought Hour. Have I got it right, Sarah? Because it's such a long name, isn't it?
I'll pull it up just to make sure. I'm pretty sure it's called Digital Free Thought Radio.
Okay, right. Well, there you go. See? I haven't actually been on it for a while, but Sarah tells me it stopped and she went to the last two events. So why is it stopped? Because I used to enjoy those when I could go. Since I've been a single parent, I have to cook. And so I have not been able to go for a long time. But there you go. I enjoyed our conversations with Larry and Ty and Dread. And that's where I got to meet those nice people. So tell me, what's happened?
Well, it's been going on for a very long time. On the last episode, they said that it was 7 years running. And perhaps there were some episodes that were not recorded. But they said that, well, Larry said he wants his Sundays back, and he's basically retiring from it, retiring from radio.
Ah, Well, I've got lots of old episodes in my archive if you want to have a look at any. Because we just chatted and talked about a very particular topic, and from an atheistic point of view. So it was quite fun.
Wow,
So,
I want to ask about this digital free thought radio. It's for a radio show to go on for 7 years. It's quite remarkable. Um, that's a long time. Do you know anything about what your listener numbers were, and was it sort of like a community radio station? And how, I wonder, in South Africa, it's not so easy to run a community radio station. So I'm keen to, what statistics do you have? Did you have any like call-in shows? Could people contribute? How exactly did that work? And were you famous or infamous because of your involvement with digital free thought radio?
Well, let me answer that last question first. No, I don't believe anyone was famous. It's a small program pre-recorded and put onto the radio in the Bible Belt, and it wasn't syndicated. It wasn't countrywide, and the contributors were guests, just like I am on your program today, and sometimes they would plug what personal things they're doing in their life. And every time they would speak about certain topics and kind of tell personal stories, things like that. As far as numbers of statistics of listeners, I have no idea. I believe that would be Larry who could answer that question. Yeah.
Larry was the host. He would know all that, the algorithm side of things, I believe. Yeah.
Perhaps Ty would as well.
Yeah. Anyway.
Wow, that's interesting. I love that. Because in South Africa, we've now started to have these community radios. So I live in Worcester, which is the Afrikaans name of the town. And we have Worcester Radio. It's mostly music and advertising of small businesses, but I find it fascinating that while certain aspects of media are going global, others are becoming more concentrated to small local communities. So it's just interesting. I would have loved to. I think I'll try to find some of your episodes online. Can I do that?
Yeah. Ty has got all of them, I think, and Dread too. So you just go to, well, Ty would have them in his Let's Chat channel, I think, on YouTube. And what's the name of Dread's Pastafarian channel? But I can put the links in for you so that you can go and look at them, or look and listen.
Please, I'd love to. Yeah. I'd love to. Sarah, are you at all familiar with the radio show? They went for about 7-8 years as well. Reasonable Doubts. They were on some sort of public radio. They were in Michigan, Grand Rapids. If you want to check out some really nice free thought and rationalist and atheist sound, you can check out Reasonable Doubt. Reasonable Doubts. They were also on a public radio station. But I want to know, besides being a radio host, what do you do when you're not on radio and when you're not a guest on our show?
Well, I am working a job that is kind of an in-between job while I'm waiting for my son to be taken care of. He's autistic. So right now I work at a welcome center just north of the Georgia border.
What exactly does a welcome center do? Is it? I have no idea. Makes you feel welcome.
It's a glorified bathroom with mats and pamphlets.
Okay, so one refreshes, and that's it's actually we don't have things like that, and it's an important need when people are out in public. So, okay, how old is your son, if I may ask?
He's 15 years old. Yeah, and he's one of 4. I have 2 stepkids and 2 biological kids.
And where does he fit in the chronology? Is he sort of?
He's the baby.
Yeah. Okay.
We've got 2 in their late 20s, almost 17, and he is 15.
I am a teacher. I don't know if John told you, and I have a small. It's not a school. It's like a tutoring center, and I have 2 kids that are autistic as well. And I would say that they're on the high end functioning, and I find that they are amazing to work with. And I love the way they see the world, and I love trying to sort of try to experience the world through their eyes. How has being the parent of an autistic child changed your perspective on life and the world in general?
Well, let's see. Change my perspective on life. Well, I get a lot of people asking me, how are you so patient? You're as patient as a saint. And I just say, you learn on the job. So from day one, it was normal baby stuff. And then as you notice that he wasn't developing as a normal kid would, then you learn how to go through those challenges. And every year there are new challenges that come about. And sometimes old challenges are solved. So that's really nice.
Yeah. Well, I'm a retired teacher, and I did a bit of teaching in special schools. So I met autism and EBD and ADHD. I met a whole gamut of different conditions that never used to exist, but we diagnose them now. And there was one boy who was severely autistic, lovely looking boy, but completely in his own world, locked in almost. Very, very sad. Yeah. Anyway, you're in the Bible Belt, so you must have started out as a Christian, surely, or have you moved there recently?
I've lived in 5 different U.S. states.
Ooh.
And I've traveled all over this country and Canada and Mexico. I would not say that I'm from the South, nor would I say that I am Southern. But I've lived in so many different places that I just kind of, I just feel well traveled as far as this country goes. I'm from Los Angeles, actually. So,
Oh, yeah. Because
yeah.
I asked that because of the Free Thought Radio connection. You know, I mean, I don't remember us getting very many religious people as guests on that show. So, so do you remember? Apart from Dred, of course, who's a pastafarian.
Oh, well, let me speak to the other part of your question. I grew up with a lot of different types of Christian backgrounds, and I have a very big family. So, you know, we even have some clergy in the family. We have evangelists. We have apologists. Almost every single person in my family is very, very Christian, very, very religious.
Ooh. So, how did you not fit in? How did you become different?
I became different because around age 8, I started asking questions. And from my perspective, I didn't get the answers I was looking for. So, way back then, I decided that the default answer is I don't know. And I'm not convinced unless I become convinced with good answers.
Yeah. The trouble is, to religious people, I don't know is an admission of defeat, really, isn't it? Because they desperately want to have an answer, and they'll assert that they got an answer, even if they can't show the evidence that supports it.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I've known a lot more than just my family as far as people around the country, and people see it as a virtue to have the answers.
Yeah, yeah.
They love having the Bible because they love um, being able to say, "Oh, I have the answers,
Yeah,
and I know what's going to happen," and that brings them comfort, I suppose.
that's right. Yes, there's comfort and certainty. Well, it took Tertia a lot longer than 8 years for her to quit. So, would
Way
you like?
longer. I'm always so impressed when I hear that people discovered at 8 or 9. They just said, "I'm not satisfied." Maybe you weren't as well indoctrinated as I was, because yeah, I just admire anybody who realizes at 8 this is nonsense and has the courage or the guts or the to say it out loud. How did you raise your children? So you have a blended family. Uh, and you mentioned something before we started. You said that you and your wife are celebrating your anniversary today.
Yes.
How did that come about, and how does that go down in South Carolina? And how did so and I just have to say that another reason I'm curious about this is I currently have a little boy in my class who has 2 mothers, and he how the other kids cope with that is interesting to not, they don't have to cope with it, but how they react to it
How
is
old is he? How old is that kid with 2 mothers?
13, 14.
Oh, right. Yes.
Yeah.
Beyond the age of realizing, as I would say.
Oh yeah, he talks about my mother that and my mother that, giving their names, and it's to him it's not an issue, but
Yeah.
even in a country that where same-sex marriage is allowed and it's legal, still people sort of go, "Oh, what?"
Yeah.
So do you get that, and how does it? How do you handle it, and how did your kids handle it when they were younger?
Okay, so let's start with the kids. The kids, the first 2 have a heavy influence from their mother, who is Catholic. And so the first two kids, they consider themselves Catholic, and they do all of the Catholic things. And then my biological kids, we raised them as non-religious, and that's basically the placeholder that we have. So when somebody asks, we say non-religious. And then I divorced and got remarried a couple years ago, and my kids right away understood, same-sex marriage and things like that. So that wasn't an issue. And believe it or not, this particular area, I won't pinpoint it too much here on this program, but in this particular area, there is only a little bit of, I guess, discrimination. It's just certain things, certain looks, certain comments, but employers don't seem to have any issue, and that's great. You would expect that to be an issue, but it's not. So that's really fun. Both of our families are supportive, except some of my extended family. But can't have it all, right?
Well, you're very lucky, especially in that part of the world. I should think you must have found a little nucleus of safe haven, as it were.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I even asked my wife, I said, if you want to move somewhere that's a little bit more accepting, I'm open to it. Maybe something a little more cosmopolitan, maybe New York, whatever. And she said she doesn't have a problem. She said, and she's lived in this area for 30 years. So,
okay.
So she doesn't have a problem. So that's good enough for me.
And she's tolerant towards you bringing up your children without religion.
She actually hasn't given me much input on that. She considers herself non-practicing Catholic.
Right.
So it's not really a big discussion. We just don't discuss religion. We don't really need to.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
It's not a taboo subject then?
No, I think it's just not relevant.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's the best case scenario, huh?
Yeah. Very good. Yeah.
Yeah, well, your partner has to be a non-practicing, because I don't think the Catholic Church condones same-sex relationships. So it's easy for her not to have to think. But what's interesting to me as well, as you were talking about how your family is mostly accepting, and how it's not really the religion is not a thing with you and your partner, but it made me think of how same-sex relationships are exactly the same as different sex relationships. We have the same types of issues. It's not as if all same-sex relationships are condoned by, like you said that some of your distant family members didn't approve. I know different sex marriages where one of the partner's families don't approve of the relationship. So it's very good to see that we're moving into a space where it's just a relationship between two people who love one another, and every single relationship has elements of conflict and elements of struggle and things that have to be worked out. And it's good that we're getting to that point. I have a brother who has a same-sex partner, and I mean, I wonder, sometimes I think I have more squabbles with my husband than he has with his. And and my mom talks about her two sons, and she has two sons-in-law. So, oops, there goes my camera. So don't just stay still. Is there anything else you've got, John? Because I have a question that's completely down a different rabbit hole.
Oh, go for it.
So you're currently in South Carolina. I want to ask whether you've ever seen Gone with the Wind. So, have you seen the movie?
Yes. It's not a South Carolina thing. It's not even a South thing. It's an American movie.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I would say anybody 30 and up probably has seen that movie in the United States.
Yeah, probably.
I saw. So I don't know. How did I get onto this topic of in my personal life? How I got onto the topic of Gone with the Wind? But I just happened to I saw it, and it was oh yes, that's how I got onto it. Carol Burnett, the Carol Burnett show reels are appearing on my Facebook stream, and she did a parody of Gone with the Wind that I found absolutely hilariously funny. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but that made me think about Gone with the Wind. And since you're from South Carolina, I find it so interesting that you say it's an American thing, not a Southern thing. Because then last night I watched a review of should Gone with the Wind still be screened? Should we still talk about it? Should we still watch it?
Wow.
And that is the actual interesting thing that I was wondering whether it's at all a topic. I did see in the YouTube video that I watched about Gone with the Wind that there was recently, as in last year, there was a screening of the movie in a theater that was actually stopped because it was deemed to be not insensitive to, so it was in a southern state where they prevented the movie from being screened. And there was a whole discussion about Southern slavery apologists and apologists for the South and secession. And in view of the current political atmosphere, I just found, I wonder what your opinion is, if you're willing to say. And I don't want to talk politics, it's more about the sort of the ideas.
So being a humanist, I don't think civil rights and treating people fairly is a political issue, in my opinion. So I don't have any problem speaking about it. Yeah, there's a controversy going around about Gone with the Wind. Just a little bit. It's not really big news. It's more like internet, casual. Every now and then you might see a headline. Nobody's really spending that much time worried about such an old movie. However, it's possible that there are some people who are looking at it through 2024 eyes.
Yeah.
And they're kind of seeing what they kind of didn't notice before. That it's glorifying slavery and saying, "Oh yeah, they were just our friends who we happened to own," So, that's it's a really big hurdle that this country is still trying to get over, because and they're not going to get over it until they completely admit everything that they did. If you can't give someone forgiveness unless they say sorry first. So you have to really, and people need reparations, real reparations from the government. I think that that's deserved at the very least.
Yeah, that was basically the tenet of the show that I watched, the presenter, and it was about the film and how the film is still relevant because of what it says, and that there are still people defending that position. So that's why I wanted to ask you about it, because I think although it's the movie is 80 years old, 80 plus, but it's still relevant in many ways. I was also thinking something that I've not thought about in a very long time, is that how in many ways the male female stereotypes in Gone with the Wind. I mean, there's so much. That was actually something that when I watched some clips. I mean, can you imagine Scarlett O'Hara and Sissy being lesbians. I mean, how interesting would that be?
Well, really, my dear, I don't
Missy,
give
what's
a
her
damn.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very famous line from the movie. Good job, John. Have you seen it a few times? Maybe once?
Sorry, say it again.
Have you seen the movie?
Yeah, yeah. Who hasn't? It's not just an American thing. It's a Western civilization thing, really, isn't it? Anybody who's in the Anglo sphere must have seen. How could they have avoided seeing that black and white movie? It's had so many years of opportunity going out there. I mean, that and the Flintstones. So there you go. They're endemic, aren't they, or ubiquitous? One of those words.
Yeah.
So, but this is history, isn't it? I mean, the people who object to it are expecting things to be like we would like them today to have been like that back then. This is ridiculous. History is different from the present, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
there was sword fighting, for example, and that's gone out of fashion a bit.
I suppose they could remake the movie to be more realistic. And if they were more realistic, then Scarlett O'Hara probably would have not been empowered the way she was. And if they were more realistic, then the slavery aspect would be more realistic, and they wouldn't look like they're having such a good time being owned. And however, when you make art, when you make films, you're going for a certain audience, and I think that at the time they were correct in their particular audience, and that's why it was so well received.
They wanted to portray entertainment for them, didn't they? So that's how it turned out.
Yes.
Yeah. So, sorry, Tercia?
No, go ahead, John. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to take the conversation in a different direction because I'm interested to find out what Sarah. She's been on this show that I used to be on as well, and that's a sort of activism thing, isn't it? Only people who've got a mission or even sort of an interest in spreading some values and principles would bother to turn up for a show like that. So, do you have a mission, Sarah? Are you trying to convert the world, solve the problems?
Well, I'll tell you what. There's a lot of religious harm that I'm not okay with. However, I don't hate religious people. I don't like the systems that can indoctrinate people into doing bad things. But in general, I don't hate the people, and I think it's important to show that people without religion can be compassionate and lead by example. So if you show that, then that's really all you need to do. You don't need to completely be an activist or, an atheist evangelist. That seems a little odd to me.
What would you describe as an atheist evangelist? I'm curious.
Well, that would be someone who actively goes into the community and holds up pamphlets and says, please, come this way. Let me tell you the truth. Exactly, the same format that a religious group would use. And they do that here a lot. Right?
Do they?
There's a.
Oh, right. You mean the religious or the atheists?
The religious.
For a minute, I thought.
I have not seen any. However, I am aware of some groups in the United States that are more activist based as far as atheism goes. And, they usually do public talks where they set up a booth at a coffee shop or at a park. Larry's done that. If you want to,
Yes, he has. Yeah,
ask him to come on and ask him about it.
and Ty also does.
Yes, he
He
has.
does
And he probably will continue to.
street epistemology. Yes.
Correct. Yes.
I'd like to welcome Mark, who's watching us. Mark Champneys. I'm never quite sure how to say your name, Mark, but I'm having a go at it. Is it Champneys? Give me a nod in the text if you think that's an okay way of saying it. Mark is going to be a guest of ours sometime in the future, I think. He and I have been sort of sparring on, I think it's Facebook, not Twitter. He's watching us now to see whether we're acceptable.
I see. I see the comment.
Yeah, and it's an issue. This issue of reparations. So Mark, welcome to the show. And I'm not going to try to say your surname because I might just make a fool of myself, and you'll be angry at me. So I'll just say hi, Mark.
Well,
but
that's
the
Mark's.
issue.
That's Mark's acceptance of my pronunciation. So
Good. So say it slowly so I can hear it, please, John.
Champneys.
Champneys. The whole issue, the whole topic of reparations for slavery is very relevant to my lived experience in South Africa because we had apartheid.
Yes.
And they were, that was only 30 years ago that we let go of that system. Yes. So it's currently still a very hot topic. Who should anybody take responsibility? Who should take responsibility? Should any reparations be made? And there's this whole movement of give back the land, which is obviously in America, the African Americans who are in the United States never owned land there because they were brought from other lands. So they can't really claim give back our land. So it's a complicated issue, the whole issue of reparations, because how far back does one go?
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe Mark, that's my I'm very conflicted. I think there should be some form of reparation, but how does one do it, and how?
Yeah.
So I don't have a solution to the problem, but I want to just circle around.
Can I just say, where does it stop? I mean, should Homo sapiens be giving reparation to Homo Neanderthal? I can't say that word. That's the one. Neanderthal. Yes, because we didn't treat them very well, I don't believe. But you've got to have a dividing line somewhere, haven't you? I mean, nobody can be held responsible for the actions of their ancestors, can they?
It's a sticky one. I think we should have a program on that because it's not easy, and I think maybe as a South African, I could speak to that as somebody who am where I am today because I was not born black in 1973. I am where I am today because I was clever enough to choose white parents, so I was really smart. I went about it really well, you know.
You worked really hard to get there. Yeah.
I worked really hard to choose white parents, you know.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
So yeah,
I chose parents that weren't religious.
You did even better than I did.
Good job.
John, you were better at choosing because you chose parents in the right part of the world who had the right brand of non-religiousness and the right skin color and the right language. I mean, bloody hell, you did well, boy. You did good. Congratulations.
I can't take the credit though, can
I? May I? And also, he's male.
Yes.
He really got everything right.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yep.
Yes.
And heterosexual. We can add. So John, you just have all the right choices in life.
Well, what can I say?
But I want to ask about Sarah. This whole thing you said about atheist evangelism, it interests me, and maybe I should ask, do you think we should have activists for humanism and atheism, and is humanism and atheism the same? I don't think it is. I think if you had to label yourself, what would you label yourself as? Let's maybe start with that.
Yeah. So, yes, I'm an atheist, but that's not, doesn't really tell you much about me. That's just one answer to one question, you know. So really, I just go by humanist as far as a label. And that tells you that I'm going to work towards putting people first, regardless of what their background is, social, economic, you know, for upbringing, their education, things like that. You know, putting people first is very important to me.
Absolutely, yes. Well, I get invited to go and speak at humanist gatherings sometimes. And the first thing I do is I say, please will you put your hand up if you're also an atheist? And they all do, because they're all. So I think that humanism it's for atheists who want to belong to a club.
That's interesting that you say that. I was a humanist way 20 years before I knew what a humanist was.
Uh-huh.
So I've figured out my values from life and experience, and then I realized that humanist is something that aligns with my values.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So
I
you sort
didn't
of
start with humanism and say, let me learn all of these values and then do that.
Yeah. So you didn't get it from the book. You invented it for yourself and then found the book fitted. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I believe that I'm treating people right, and I value that, and I see that's good for other people. That's good for me. That's a good example for my kids. So, you know, and I don't have any pushback on that. I don't have anybody who's telling me, hey, you shouldn't be a humanist because that's bad. No one says that to me.
Well, I get that.
I would have told you that humanism is bad because I was taught to avoid being a humanist at all cost, because I was brought up in the religious tradition that teaches total depravity. I was a full-on Calvinist, and humanism was one of the isms that we had to avoid, along with communism. And so to be accused of being a humanist would have been really, really bad, because that means exactly what you said. You put people first, and the religious tradition that I grew up in would say, no, you put Jesus Christ first. Any idea that puts humans first is absolutely depraved, because humans are completely depraved from the so we even from before our conception, we are it's the doctrine of absolute depravity. So it's interesting to me that now I have no trouble with identifying as humanist, although I do think that we have moved a ways along from the original meaning of the term humanist, and I find that a little bit problematic in our use of many terms. We have strayed so far because of just the way time runs. For example, terms like left and right, liberal and conservative. What exactly does it mean? So when you say the humanism to you, Sarah, means putting humans first, what? I'm not trying to be pedantic or anything. I would just like to know how exactly would it sounds nice, put humans first, but that means that which humans do we put first? And I'm thinking of, there might be situations where you might have to choose between different types of humans. So, for example, if you have a group of humans who say, like currently in South Africa, that if you're white and Afrikaans, then you should be put first. And then there are other humans who say, no, 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 no. If you're black, you need your land back, and then you should be put. So that's why I would like to ask you, how do you feel about the term secular humanist, which refers back to the original meaning of the term humanism that comes from the Enlightenment? John, you've got to help me. I'm a bit rusty on my philosophy. What do you say, Sarah?
So I am familiar with secular humanism. I don't really personally use that term because, like I said, I chose humanist based on my values I already had. I'm not necessarily spending a lot of time on secularism, mostly because I'm not an activist,
Yeah.
and I want to be honest in my portrayal of myself. If I was an activist, if I felt there was an avenue for me to do that, then I would probably go with that. And as far as which people to take care of, it really depends on your position. It depends on the amount of power that you have. So this is how I feel. If you're someone like me who is just, a wife, a mother, you go to work, you take care of kids, you don't have a lot of power, you're not in government, you take care of your family, and you take care of people in the community that you work with, acquaintances, things like that. You take care of the people around you.
Yeah, you nurture the vulnerable, don't you?
Absolutely. Yes. And if someone's in need and I have to give, then I will.
Yes, yes.
And of course, I'm not going to give beyond what I need to take care of my family. So that's where that comes from. But I really think that government and people with more power and systems should have the obligation to take care of people on a grander scale. Because the more power you have, the more responsibility you have to take care of the more vulnerable in larger quantities.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm going to play maybe not devil's advocate, but perhaps angel's advocate here. I'm going to say what a lot of religious people, if they were on this show, would say. They would say, "Where do you get your values from?"
Yeah, I know this one. I've heard this tune before.
Yes.
I honestly, it's as simple as you touch a stove and it's hot. Okay, so just start with that. You start small as a child. You see how your actions impact others. If you have the base philosophy of harm reduction, then that's really all you need. So if you can agree on harm reduction, then that can help influence your values in pretty much every single way.
Yeah. So Mark has picked up on this. He's saying, where does the responsibility come from? He's another of these from people. He is expecting that our attitudes towards the rest of our species have to emanate from somewhere. And I'm of the thought that we care, and we've evolved to be social animals, and the only way we have got to be so successful is by cooperating. And that means we care about each other because we want these people to be cooperatives. And if we don't care for them, we don't have any help. So there you go. And it works both ways, of course. If they look after us, we'll help them. And that's it. There is no from.
Well,
it doesn't have to be written in a book.
This question was bound to come up sooner or later, because my latest thing, I didn't start off with it, but I decided a couple of weeks ago that I will ask every single guest on our show whether they believe in free will or not. because I've been of the opinion for a while now, I suppose, that we have no such thing as free will, that everything is completely so I'm a full determinist, and this ties in with the whole concept of where does it come from, as Mark asked. It comes from our genetic makeup, our evolutionary past, as well as our culture.
It's hard to hear you.
Yeah, she's got an audio problem at the moment. South Africa does this sometimes. You're dropping out. You're dropping out, Tess.
Culture.
Yeah. Maybe go and come back again, Tercia. Yeah. Oh, she's completely gone now. That's South Africa for you. And anyway, Mark is coming in here. He's saying, so
Am I back?
You're back. Yes, well done. Should we let you carry on with what you were saying then?
We couldn't hear the last 30 seconds, Tercia.
No.
Yeah, sorry. I should have switched to another Wi-Fi. I actually do have another Wi-Fi router, but I think that what we experience as free will and how we respond to one another comes from our evolutionary history, our DNA, how our brain works. There's no supernatural magical source for it or fountain that it springs from. It's just a very complex combination of factors over which we have very little to no control. And ultimately, we are, even our altruistic behaviors come from a sort of selflessness, which is not bad, because if I take into account that my actions will have repercussions and that other people's actions have repercussions on my life, then the wise thing to do is to think about what I do, because it's not karma, it's just that's how it works in a deterministic world. This action A causes a result. So that's where it comes from.
Well, I don't want to go down the deterministic route, that rabbit hole at the moment, because I just want to say, Mark is asking questions here, and it's not only about survival value. It's you see, and it's also about human exceptionalism. We are not special. And what has happened is lots of social animals, not just us, but dogs, for example, and herds of cattle and flocks of birds, back in the days when they didn't look after their young, that family group died out. And it was the kind, nurturing ones who had empathy and caring who procreated more and had more descendants. That's where it comes from. It's not written down.
Sarah, but you have to grant me just a short yes, no, or I don't know about the free will thing. Just, you don't have to go into it. Just say yes, no, I don't know, I don't care, because many people have told me it's not important, I don't care.
So the people I've talked to over the years that discuss free will, they define it as something that's given to us by God. So I don't think it's real, so we don't have free will.
Whoa.
I like that, because that is what most people mean when they say it colloquially. I like that. I'm going to write that down. Okay.
Well, okay. If you want to go down that rabbit hole, let me tell you some of the problems with that view. Because if we don't have free will, nobody is guilty of anything. None of us have any responsibilities, and we can't be blamed. So you can open all the prisons, you can let everybody out, because it wasn't their fault. They were determined to do it by some mysterious force beyond their control.
Well, John, might I ask you your definition of free will? Because it's so important to define these particular things, because we cannot come to any sort of conversational agreement if we don't have the same definition. So what's your definition of free will?
Well, I don't think we have libertarian free will. I don't think that. I think we've learned better than to imagine that we can do whatever pleases us. You know, this is not, we're not here in order to gratify ourselves. So we've got to fit in, basically. We're in a society, in a culture, and so we have limited free will to behave appropriately within that constraint.
Okay, I still don't understand your definition. So when I talked about from God, either the religious would say either God is in charge of everything you do, or God lets you have free will to do what you want to do. And I say throw all of that out. We're just here, we make our decisions.
Yeah.
And usually we're responsible for our decisions.
Absolutely. I agree. Yes.
That's it. Unless you maybe have some kind of, I don't know, something wrong with your health that you didn't just, it wasn't really your fault to decide your actions. Other than that, usually you will have to atone for, when I say atone, I shouldn't use that word. I think maybe I should use the word, for example, some people go to jail for their actions, and some people have good lawyers.
Yes.
So
Yes.
some people do have to pay for their actions, and some people don't.
Yes, these are, unfortunately, the law is, it doesn't necessarily deliver justice. We'd love it to, but unfortunately, there are mistakes made, and sometimes reparation has to be made afterwards. But Mark is here saying that evolution is only about survival value, not volition. I disagree, because survival value, you see, some of the early catchphrases that were attached to evolution are backwards. It's not a struggle for survival. It's not survival of the fittest. It's the other way round. What happens is the unfit die. That's the mechanism, not, everybody competing to be the strongest and the fastest or whatever. It's, if you're crap, you don't survive. You don't live long enough to breed, you see, and that's the end of your genome. But the other thing that people don't understand is that it's not just about physical characteristics, because behaviors evolve as well. And if you don't believe that, go and try to herd sheep with a wolfhound. Because we've bred dogs to do jobs. They have innate behaviors. We've bred them. And behavior is evolved in the case of, where there wasn't artificial selection going on. Nature did the selection. And those of us who are cooperative, congenial, form good relationships are the majority as a result of having those behaviors.
Which is why I say that we don't have free will, because it's all been determined by our genes and how our brains work.
No, it hasn't. No.
On that topic, I want to circle back to something you said. I want to ask you about, you said that you've been asked oftentimes, where do you get your patients from? What do you do in dealing with your child who's autistic? Have you ever felt that you are at your wit's end, that you don't know what to do? And what is your go-to coping method when you have those moments? As I'm sure we all have those moments. What do you do? Do you meditate? Do you go for a walk? Do you bang your head against the wall? what do you do? What is your coping mechanism when you feel things are just too much for me now?
Well, in the past, I've had unhealthy coping mechanisms. For example, I used to smoke cigarettes, and
Oh,
I was a heavy smoker. Okay, but I was a heavy smoker, and I justified it with it's helping me keep my cool when my patience wasn't where I wanted it to be. And now I clean. So when I'm, frustrated and I don't have nice words to say, I go clean something.
oh well, in that case, you must have been very frustrated because you're in an extremely clean room, except for that mark on the wall, which is obviously where you've been banging your head against it.
Are you talking about the control? That's
Yes.
the control for the
Yes.
light. That's the control for the light.
Yeah, yeah.
My wife has a different perspective. She says, "Hey, it looks like you're not frustrated enough."
Ah. I think my husband wishes that I had that habit when I couldn't cope. So you've quit smoking. How did you do that? Was it hard for you?
Oh, well, you see, when when my ex moved out, I suddenly felt a lot less stressed, and so I couldn't justify smoking anymore.
All
So I
right.
watched a couple of videos learning how long it takes for the nicotine to exit my system.
Mm.
And each level of 3, you gain a certain health back into your body. After 3 days, it's easier. After 3 weeks, it's even more easier. And after 3 months, you're
Yeah.
quit.
Yeah. There
Do
you
you
go.
still get cravings? Do you still crave?
No,
Um,
no.
no. How long have it been since you quit?
Let's see. Since the beginning of 2020, so
Wow.
over 4 years.
What's your opinion? What's your opinion of Jordan Peterson? Because he is a person who has been known to say that you could only quit smoking with the help of some supernatural being, or having had some sort of drug-induced experience. You can't quit smoking. Jordan Peterson said that on stage in a conversation with Matt Delanty. So what do you?
I would love to answer that question, and my answer is I don't think Jordan Peterson is very smart.
Well, I'll tell him you said that.
I don't. So
I think he's extremely eloquent, but rather misled.
I don't think he's even eloquent. I think he is a master of word salad, and I think he
Okay.
uses
Yeah.
terminology that he's. But Sarah, do you also think that he has a thing for, or men have a thing for Jordan Peterson? Do you know how many? He just seems to. I've heard so many men who thinks that he's really eloquent, and I don't think
No,
he's
hang
even
on, hang on.
eloquent.
This is a bit of woman-splaining going on here, isn't it?
Well, you said he was eloquent, John. I don't think he's eloquent at all. He talks nonsense half the time.
Well, yeah, but it's eloquent nonsense. It sounds impressive.
No, okay, not to me.
You know what? I have noticed that he has become less eloquent over the years. If you look at some of the debates that he had back in 2018, and you look at his interviews on Joe Rogan right now, a stark difference. I'd say he's fallen off, and that's a little sad. But
Right.
I'm not that sad.
He's had mental problems, hasn't he? So maybe
Well, I'm not going to count that against him, but I will count his immorality against him. I don't agree with most of what he says, and some of his rhetoric is very damaging, I think. He, the thing about men liking him, when you appeal to misogyny to a certain degree, you're going to have a skewed audience of more men than women. And as far as why does he have an audience at all? Well, perhaps because he speaks with such confidence that makes the audience feel like, yes, yes, you know what you're talking about. You're very confident. So that's my perspective.
Yeah, I like it. So I'm sorry about this, guys, but we've had an hour and it's been fun. And you're very wise, I think, Sarah. So what's left to say now is what we don't know who we're going to have next week, because there's Johnny Thompson who is bubbling around. Maybe we'll get him next week. Tercia, that's your fish to hook. And I've also got a possibility of the naked pastor. Do you fancy the naked pastor? And then there's Mark Champneys. I don't know when he wants to come on, but those are all people who are up in the air being juggled for our show sometime in the near future. Okay. Girls, thank you very much. Tercia's collapsed, I see.
Thank you, John. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. You've been wonderful. And thank you, Tercia, for being my co-host as usual. So, say bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Nice talking, Sarah.